If you find that your blades and bits just aren't performing like they used to, you might not need to send them out for a sharpening. You might just need to clean them. As you can see, I've got a dirty bit. All right, all this buildup here, this is going to affect the cut quality. So you want to make sure you clean that up. In fact, this bit got me through my entire Rubo workbench build. So that's a lot of mortises that I wound up cutting with this bad boy, and it is overdue for a cleaning. My table saw blade here, this is just something that every couple of months I like to clean just to make sure that these teeth don't have any buildup, pitch, or resin or anything on there, and that will also make the table saw cut nice and clean. So let's get to the cleaning process. The cleaning agent I'm going to use is Rockler's Pitch and Resin Remover. I've been using this stuff for years. It works great, so I've never had a need to look for anything else. But it smells to me like a citrus cleaner, so you could probably use one of those or something like Simple Green for this. So let's do the router bit first. I'm just going to grab a little cup here, pour some of the solution in there, and then I will dip the router bit. I'm going to leave it in there for about 5 minutes. Now, depending on how caked on the schmutz is, you might want to use different tools to help get the rest of this material off of there. If it's very light, you can usually just get an acid brush like this and wipe the surface, or even a paper towel, and that should get most of the stuff off. Now, in this case, this is pretty stubborn, so what I'm going to do is actually use a Scotch-Brite pad. Right? Dip that into the solution, and just very carefully wipe the schmutz off. And of course, be very careful. This is a router bit. It can cut you. And when I do this, I'm being very careful not to actually rub too hard on the cutting edge, right? Because I don't really want to dull it. I just want to make sure that the pad is under the blade and then over the blade. And once it looks pretty clean, you just wipe off the excess resin remover with a dry paper towel. And once you're done, you could just pour the solution back into the container. You could reuse this later. For blades, you can pretty much use any shallow pan that's big enough to hold a blade. Drop the blade down inside and just soak it with some of the resin remover. Now, the instructions on this usually indicate to dilute this stuff down because it is concentrated. But because I always use it on the blade and then put it back in the container, I actually use this stuff for years, so I like to keep it in its concentrated form. I don't know that it necessarily improves anything, but I would guess that more concentrated means it's going to be stronger. Because I'm not throwing it out after each use, I'm not wasting it. After a 5-minute soak, I can usually just get my brush here and go along the edges. All right, and once again, if the buildup isn't too bad, a brush should do the trick. And if it does wind up being a little bit too stubborn, I just go back to the little scrub pad and do the same thing. You notice I'm sort of going with the directionality of the blades. If you go this way, you're going to have a much harder time. And you might even wind up dulling the edges of your carbide tips. Now, once you have the outside edges done, you're going to need to do the inside face, and you probably want to do the back end of the teeth. So just keep that directionality in mind. It should be fairly simple. Now, for the front face of each tooth, I usually just spread the pad out like so, and put that in between the space between each tooth, and just take a few strokes like so. That's typically enough to keep it nice and clean. And since it tends to get pretty sudsy, I like to take a spray bottle and just rinse it off a little bit with some water. And now I can pour the cleaner back into the container. And since it can be tricky to get all of the liquid out from in between the teeth, I actually just use a hair dryer to make sure everything is bone dry. Of course, the additional advantage being that I can make sure I still look good for my close-up. Oh yeah. The final treatment for my blades and bits is to give it a coat of a dry lubricant, and that's going to help extend the life. The stuff I use is called Dry Coat. Just spray a little bit on the teeth. Make sure I get both sides. And I take a dry paper towel and I just rub it into the metal. Pretty much the same treatment for the router bit. Simple routine maintenance like this can really save you a lot of time and money. First of all, if your blades and bits are clean, they just cut cleaner, and that means better results for your projects. The other thing is, without all that pitch and resin on there, we don't get as much heat buildup, and the heat is what really contributes to these edges becoming dull, which means you have to then send them out to the sharpener. Now, I send my stuff out to a professional sharpener, and the fewer times I have to do that a year, the more money I'm going to save. So this is something that I try to do at least monthly, and if I have a big project like my workbench that uses one particular bit heavily, I may even clean it in the middle of the project, but certainly after the project is done, that bit is going to get cleaned up and hopefully it will extend the life. The other thing I wanted to mention is all of the different cleaning solutions out there, ranging from really caustic stuff, which I try to avoid, to the stuff that's very environmentally friendly. Even just some simple soap and water could do the trick. So that's what I want to hear from you guys. What stuff do you use to clean your blades and bits? So that's about it. That's how I keep my blades and bits nice and sharp between sharpenings. Thanks for watching.